We are living in unprecedented times. Constant wars worldwide. Nation against nation. Kingdom against kingdom. They're genetically modifying our food. Increased violence as the heart of man grows cold. Ever-increasingly tyrannical governments around the world. Stay connected. End Time Prophecy News with W. Dean Shook, your connection to the signs of the times.
When you download the iHeartRadio app and put the W. Dean Shook Show on your list of stations, you will prove to the world that you're a little bit smarter than everyone else. The W. Dean Shook Show, your connection to the signs of the times.
Now, you have a source for the truth in the news. W. Dean Shook, End Time News. Your connection to the signs of the times.
Welcome to End Time News. I'm your host, W. Dean Shook. And instead of bringing you news today, I want to bring a little insight for the upcoming elections, both the midterm and the presidential election that's coming up. Why are these two elections so important? Well, first of all, if Hillary becomes president in 2016, Obama's policies are going to continue unabridged. Now, why do I say that? Let me give you a little history here. Obama taught workshops on Alinsky's theories and methods for years. In 1985, he started working as a community organizer for an Alinsky group called Developing Community Projects. While building coalitions of black churches in Chicago, Obama was criticized for not attending church and deciding to become an instant Christian. Then, he helped fund the Alinsky Academy. Obama was a paid director of the Woods Fund, which is a nonprofit organization used to provide startup funding and operating capital for Midwest Academy, which teaches the Alinsky tactics of community organizing. Obama also sat on the Woods Fund board with William Ayers, the founder of the quote-unquote Weather Underground, which is a domestic terrorist organization. Now, Hillary Rodham, as a student at Wellesly in 1969, interviewed Saul Alinsky and wrote her thesis on Alinsky's theories and methods. She concludes in her thesis by writing this, and I quote, "Alinsky is regarded by many as the proponent of a dangerous socio-political philosophy. As such, he has been feared, such as Eugene Debs or Walt Whitman or Martin Luther King has been feared, because each embraced the most radical of political faiths, democracy." Well, Alinsky offered Hillary a job on graduation from Wellesly, but she decided to attend Yale Law School, where she met her husband, Bill Clinton. Now, Rules for Radicals on page 113 says, from the moment the organizer enters a community, he lives, dreams, eats, breathes, and sleeps only one thing, and that is to build the mass power base that he will call the Army. Until he has developed that mass power base, he confronts no issues. Let me say that again. Until he developed that mass power base, he confronts no issues. Let me give you a couple more quotes from Saul Alinsky's book, Rules for Radicals. Page 59. But to the organizer, compromise is a key and beautiful word. It's always presented in the pragmatics of operation. It's making a deal, getting that verbal breather, usually the victory. If you start with nothing, demand 100%, compromise for 30, and you're 30% ahead. I would argue every conservative or Constitution-minded person to know your enemy, buy and read this book, because your adversaries have memorized it and they're using the principles within its covers to destroy our great republic. Now, make no mistake, the progressive liberals or radicals' goal is to tear down the republic and shred the Constitution. The problem is, they have nothing to replace it with. They're only bent on destruction. Let me give you a quote by Donald Ayotte. He said, "A nation can only be disgraced by the failure of its citizenry to take action in the face of tyranny." Let me say that again. A nation can only be disgraced by the failure of its citizenry to take action in the face of tyranny. So you see how Hillary and Obama, their philosophies are linked firmly. So let's see what Obama has used and how he's using it right now. He was taught to destroy the middle class. Now, Obama is desperate to make people believe that he really cares about the middle class. Well, after 5 years, as you already know, his actions speak louder than words. Some 85% of the middle class say they're worse off today than they were 10 years ago. According to the Wall Street Journal, from the time Obama took office in 2009, the Obama years have been brutal on middle-class incomes, wiping out thousands of real income for families. The report goes on to say, the last time incomes fell this fast was during the late 70s under Jimmy Carter. And it's no consequence that economic policies then and now are so similar. The financial loss and burden imposed by Obama is greater on all workers, including blacks, Hispanics, Asians, and whites. Tax hikes in Obamacare's vast array of hidden taxes set to further rip family budgets apart. The question is, why has the middle class been hit so hard by Obama? Is it an ideological grudge? Well, Obama had two doggedly radical mentors that shaped both his ideology and his current policies. One was a committed hardcore communist. The other was renowned as a hardcore socialist. Neither man stressed American values, but taught the opposite, that America, with its free enterprise republic, God-worshipping system, is the enemy of the people. Frank Marshall Davis, a reported pedophile, race-monger, and strident communist, was Obama's family friend and was recruited by Obama's grandfather to educate young Barry in the ways of the world. It was, however, Obama's educational mentor that stressed that if real power is to be gained, it must be done at the expense of the American people and the economy. The late Harvard professor Saul Alinsky wrote that the key to weaken, then take over America is economy and its people. It's to destroy the middle class. Alinsky advocated use of class and race warfare. He believed that wealth redistribution, taking from those who work and give it to those who don't, is the catalyst to bring down the U.S. economy and free market capitalism. Well, after 5 years in office, Obama's well on his way to doing just that. Alinsky's Socialist Guidebook is embedded in Obama's record of economic policies that he's really imposed on all Americans and their families, especially the middle class. Now, it should be noted that Alinsky began his book, Rules for Radicals, with a tribute to the first radical known to man who rebelled against the establishment and did it so effectively that he at least won his own kingdom. Lucifer. Alinsky championed and sought to emulate Lucifer, otherwise known as Saint. Alinsky's game plan was to lie, cheat, and steal elections in order to control the American people and bring American commerce to its knees. Alinsky clearly recognized that Lucifer is also the king of deception, and it's upon deception that Alinsky built his political strategy. Deception, he taught his followers, is the Trojan horse that gets you inside the gates, where you can then access power and retain it by any means available, no matter the cost to the people, the government, or the nation. Now again, it's on deception that Alinsky built his political strategy. And it's Alinsky's strategy that Barack Obama wrote on a blackboard that can be seen teaching to Acorn members during his day as a Chicago community organizer. Obama's educational mentor, Alinsky, also worked as a Chicago community organizer before him. Now, it's true that Saul Alinsky preferred the teachings of Lenin, who murdered millions, to the teachings of Mao, who also murdered millions. Mao advocating obtaining power by the barrel of a gun. Lenin was more subtle by first advocating working the system and obtaining power by the vote, then using the barrel of a gun to keep it. Alinsky had no qualms about stealing the vote as a means to reach his end result, power. For Saul Alinsky, deception is the key to everything. Say one thing, do another. Even change the meanings of words. Pretend to be bipartisan in order to get the upper hand. For Alinsky, the means don't matter. Destroy whomever or whatever gets in your way. Alinsky made it clear to his followers that this is power. Now, even though Alinsky died before Obama could make it into his classroom, an Investor Business Daily educational traces Obama's affairs with Alinsky's radical ideology. Obama first learned Alinsky's rules in the 1980s, when Alinsky's radicals with the Chicago-based group of Gamaliel Foundation recruited, hired, trained, and paid Obama as a community organizer on the south side of Chicago in 1988. Obama even wrote a chapter for the book After Alinsky, Community Organizing in Illinois. He traveled to Los Angeles for 8 days of intense training at Alinsky Industrial Area Foundation. In turn, he trained other community organizers in Alinsky agitation tactics. Obama also taught Alinsky's power analysis methods at the University of Chicago. Ed Blumenfield wrote in The New American that one of Obama's advisors during the 2008 election campaign was Peter Dreyer. He was radical-in-chief. He credits Dreyer with formulating the stealth plan to destroy capitalism. His plan is to gradually expand government spending until the country nears financial collapse. At that point, a public who is accustomed to entitlements will presumably turn on its capital masters when they propose cutbacks to restore fiscal balance. Is that not what we see? The one Alinsky constant learned by Obama administration is deception. It attempts a full-blown cover-up from Benghazi Gate to fake unemployment stats, to deflecting its own deceit by accusing its opponents of lying. A trait that radical Democrats and their leaders have mastered exceedingly well. While professing to care for the middle class, Obama's answer to lift the middle class out of its current slide into poverty is to deluge Americans with hidden taxes, especially the ones attached to Obamacare, send gasoline and fuel costs soaring, and print fiat dollars to create inflated costs of food and clothing for all American households. Now, Joe Biden is right that the last 4 years of Obamacare have buried the middle class, along with the women head of household are just concurrent casualties. Obama has left 5.5 million women unemployed, putting the poverty rate among women at 16.3%, the highest in 17 years. In the socialist power play, black Americans are collateral damage. According to the Chicago Tribune, failed economic policies have led to the wiping out of gains made in the last 30 years by blacks. With plummets in wealth and high rates of foreclosure, socialism spares no race. No one is exempt from this hardship. Foretelling Obama's agenda for the middle class, Tony Atkins of the Conservative Daily reports, the WARN Act is a federal law requiring that most employers give 60 calendar days notice before they institute plant closings and mass layoffs. The point is to give workers some time to adapt to their upcoming unemployment by looking for another job, to adjust their finances, or enter into training for new skills. It's the right thing to do, and it's the law. But that pesky law has a bad timing consequence for our sitting president. Funding cuts signed by President Obama are about to take result in an estimated 2 million jobs being lost. But layoffs right before an election would be politically toxic. Obama wants to avoid angry, laid-off workers who might tend to vote Republican. So he has therefore instructed his staff to ignore the law and wait for things like executive amnesty until after the midterm election. Again, no race, no one is spared from this hardship. Obama learned his lesson well. David Alinsky, Saul Alinsky's son, reportedly stated, I'm proud to see that my father's model for organizing is being applied successfully beyond community organizing.